Aloha, hi, this is Anne, and I just got back from a wonderful vacation in Maui with my husband. If you ever get there, be sure to go snorkeling at the Molokini Reef. It was magical. I want to welcome you to my first video blog, and what I'd like to do today is I want to talk to you about a very powerful tool in helping to get conflicts back on a positive track. In other words, when things are going in a negative direction, a negative path, to be able to get to repair, to interrupt that negative cycle and get it back on track. So getting you two back in connection again. And I want to start by telling you about this couple that I happened to see when we were at the airport. We were getting ready for our 7:30 flight out of San Diego. And there was a couple in the waiting area who were getting ready for the same flight. And what I noticed, and I started to feel the vibration, the energy around them, and then other people in the waiting area picking it up, because they were definitely in conflict. They were standing, facing each other, pointing their fingers at each other. Their voices were starting to raise. You could just feel the negativity surrounding them, and you could feel how that was impacting the other people in the area. And of course, being a couples therapist, I was intrigued, even though I was on vacation. And so I was trying to ignore them, but also kind of listening and wondering, do I need to give them my card? Maybe they could use some help, because they were very unhappy people to be getting ready to go to a wonderful place like Maui. And what I picked up, what the conflict was about, as far as I understood it, was that when the agent at the counter asked for people to bring their carry-on luggage, their larger carry-on luggage, up to the front so it could be checked for no charge, the man of this couple wanted to do that, and he started to pick up his suitcase and his wife's suitcase and go off with them. She got very upset about this. She did not want her suitcase to be taken from her. She did not want to let go of it. And what I saw was an interesting dynamic that I often see with couples. Not to stereotype, but it is pretty common that as the woman in this case was becoming more emotional, more upset, I could hear the anxiety in her voice, and she was grabbing on very strongly to her suitcase handle. What her husband was doing, again, very typical, was he was trying to logic her out of it. He was trying to reason with her. And he was telling her that her bag would be fine, wouldn't cost any money, they wouldn't have to hassle with it, it would be in the baggage claim area when they got to Maui, no problem, nothing to worry about. He was trying to talk her out of her anxiety. And what happened, which I see so often when I work with couples, is that as he tried to talk her out of it, and as he tried to reason with her, her anxiety was going up. Her anxiety was going up. She was getting louder, he was getting louder, and they were like this. Finally, the flight was getting ready to board, and as I got up to get in my line to board, I heard him say to her in a very loud voice, "So I guess you don't want to go to Maui after all. Well, I'm going by myself. You can stay here." And he picked up his suitcase and he stomped off. And she was standing there kind of bewildered, not knowing what to do. So of course I was curious to hear the end of that, but my seating was being called, so I had to leave. I got in line. My husband joined me. He'd been off getting coffee for us, so he joined me in line. He hadn't seen any of this drama going on. We got on the plane, we sat in our seats, and a few minutes later I saw the man walking down the aisle by himself, walking down the aisle to his seat, which was behind ours. And then I got involved in talking with my husband and getting my seatbelt on and getting ready for the flight, doing my little meditation and all of that. And I never saw her, and I thought, oh my goodness, is he going to really go on this trip to Maui by himself and leave her here? So 5 hours later, we got off the plane, get on the shuttle bus to pick up our rental car, and right after we sat down, that couple, both of them, the man and the woman, got on, sat down. My husband, of course, had not seen any of the drama, so he didn't know who these people were. but I did, and I was just kind of watching, because what I saw was they got on that shuttle bus, they sat down right across from us, they scooted up right next to each other. He put his arm around her, she snuggled up under his chin, he gave her a kiss on the top of the head. They were chit-chatting about something, they were laughing, they were giggling, they were smiling. They looked completely happy and in love. And in fact, again, not knowing the previous scenario, my husband leaned over to me at one point and he whispered in my ear and said, "They are so cute, aren't they?" And I just kind of smiled and laughed, because I have no idea what happened between San Diego and Maui. I don't know what happened in those 5 hours, but clearly something happened, and my guess is that either of them initiated, but if one initiated or both initiated, at least it was well received, what we call a repair attempt. So what's a repair attempt? Obviously super effective in this couple's case. I think they looked like they had a great beginning to a vacation, hopefully as good as ours. So what happened in between San Diego and Maui? Well, I don't know. I wished I could have interviewed them. I would love to have heard their story. But I want to tell you a little bit about my experience of working with couples and helping them to interrupt a negative cycle, to repair that negativity and get back on a positive track. And basically what we mean by repair, it's when either or both partners recognizes that things are going south. It's going in the ditch, it's going on that negative path. And they do something to interrupt that cycle and get back on a positive track with each other. So what does that look like? And actually what we see in the research that John Gottman has done through the Gottman Institute is that the couples that are really what he calls masters at relationship, those couples who really know how to handle conflict, one of the number one things that they know how to do and that they use is repair. Interrupt and repair. So interrupt and repair, again, first of all, you have to recognize things are going in the negative cycle. We usually know when that's happening. We can feel it in our bodies. We can feel tension perhaps in our gut. We can feel our breathing change, tightness in our chest. We might hear our own voice getting more shrill or getting louder or getting more stern. We may notice our body language stiffening. We may notice ourselves or our partner pointing their finger at us. Usually we can notice the observable behaviors in our partner more than we can in ourselves. It's always easier to see what they're doing wrong than what we're doing wrong. But we can feel it inside. You've been there, you know what that feels like. We all have. At that point, when you recognize that you are triggered in some way, that you are moving in a negative direction, you probably know this is not going to go well. You probably have some history of these kinds of discussions not going well. So you have a choice there. You can either let it go, its normal course in the path of negativity, or you can change. You can do something to reach out to your partner. You can do something to soothe yourself that can change the course of that conflict and change the course of your relationship. So what does that look like? Well, there are thousands of things you could do. I want to give you a few examples. One example is just saying, verbalizing, hey, I think this is not going well, or I don't like the way I'm talking to you, or we're talking to each other. You want to make it either an I or a we, not a you statement. Not, I don't like the way you're talking to me. That is not a repair attempt. That's going to escalate things. But if you say, I'm feeling stressed right now, I'm feeling triggered, I'm feeling tense, or I need to take a few breaths, I need to calm down. Just saying that, or even just doing the calm breaths, instead of saying what you're going to say, zip your mouth, take 2 or 3 deep breaths, and then phrase what you were going to phrase in a softer way. Ask a question instead of making a demand. Make a request instead of making a complaint, for example. So changing your tone of voice, Taking a deep breath, letting your body relax is going to change how you feel, and it's going to change how you communicate. Because when our body is tense, it's going to come out in our voice, and our partner is going to hear that, and that's going to set them off, typically. So when you're feeling defensive, when you're feeling tense, when you're feeling your emotions rising, you want to stop, you want to pause, you want to calm yourself down. A couple ways to do that. Again, a couple deep breaths is probably the easiest way to do it. Another thing that I find really, really helpful for a lot of people, including myself, is to have on hand a calming phrase you can say that will calm you just in the moment. For example, I have a client who uses the phrase, and she just says it to herself silently, "I can remain calm in the midst of the storm." I can remain calm in the midst of the storm, reminding herself that she has a choice. Regardless of what her partner is doing, she has a choice to remain calm, and that will change the course of that conflict discussion. So calming yourself, soothing yourself by a deep breath, by relaxing your shoulders. One technique I learned just recently, which I've just started teaching some of my couples, it is so simple, but it's amazing because I see it working, and that is to do something called willing hands. And what you do is you just hold your hands out like this, palms up. You just hold them out. And something happens to our body when we do that it's really hard to stay tense and angry. So try that. Just holding your hands out. Try it right now as you're listening to this. Holding your hands up, palms open, receiving palms, or willing hands it's called, and see if that changes the dynamic that's occurring inside you. Another thing you can do, of course, is apologize. You can say, gee, I'm sorry. I think I said that. I said that I was kind of cranky. I'm sorry I was cranky. I'm sorry I was grumpy. Let me rephrase that. I'm sorry, that was a mean thing to say. I really didn't mean that. So apologizing for your own stuff, recognizing your own stuff and apologizing, it goes a long way. It doesn't mean it's all your fault, but certainly part of it is. You have a part in things escalating, and you can take a part in helping them de-escalate. Another thing that you can do is nonverbal. Sometimes a touch, sometimes reaching out and holding your partner's hand. Now, for some people, when their partner reaches out and touches them or holds them or gives them a hug in the middle of a conflict, for some people that is very healing, and that helps them calm down and helps them de-escalate. Other people are more like, oh no, don't touch me, I'm mad at you, don't touch me. So you need to know what works with your partner. I know, for example, with my husband, touch is very, very healing and connecting. When I'm angry, I'm not sure I want to be touched by him. But that really works well for him, and I want to give you an example of that from our own lives, from my own life. This happened a while ago, a couple years ago. My husband and I were sitting in our living room on couches facing each other, and we were having what was beginning to become a quite heated discussion. I don't remember exactly the topic, but I believe it had something to do with blended family issues. So if you're in a blended family, there are pretty much always going to be some blended family issues. We were sitting on opposite sides. He was talking at that time, and he was trying to get his point across, and he was getting more firm and very strong in his voice tone. He wasn't yelling, but he was very strong and very firm, and I was sitting there. I could feel myself. I could feel the fire starting to go inside me. I could feel myself getting defensive. And of course, what I was doing, which most of us do, is I was rehearsing in my mind my rebuttal. I was rehearsing what to say to prove to him how wrong he was and how right I was. Well, as you might guess, that would not have gone well and would not have furthered this discussion. So I sat there, and I put my hand on my abdomen. That's, for me, a sign to breathe it deeply. I just sat there. I started to breathe. I was listening. I started to breathe, and I started to repeat my calming phrase in my mind over and over silently. And I just sat there. And it was really, really, really hard, but I knew I had a choice. And he was still going. He was still going. And then I stood up. This is probably the most difficult thing to do when you're angry, but it can be hugely effective. I stood up. I walked over to the other couch. I sat next to him. I scooted up right next to him. I didn't say a word. he's still talking. He kind of looks at me, keeps talking, kind of looks at me, keeps talking, but he's slowing down, his voice is calming, the volume's coming down, he's softening a little bit, but he's still trying to make his point. I'm not saying a word. And then, to amp it up a little bit, I went like this, turned my body towards his. I took my legs, and I put my legs right on top of his knees. And when I did that, it was like he just melted. He just melted. He just stopped talking. He looked at me. He didn't say anything. He looked at me again. I just sat there. And that was it. We stopped talking. The conversation was over. Now, that was a topic that we did need to talk about, but we certainly weren't going to make any progress talking about it the way it was going, with the intensity, with the emotion, with the defensiveness, and the blaming that was starting to happen for both of us. That was not going to end well. That was not going to resolve any issue. So we were able to come back to that topic several days later, as I recall, and talk about it in a calm way. Some topics, some issues, are so nothing that you don't even have to come back to them. It's not really that important to talk about it again. For example, that couple at the airport, they probably don't need to talk about that suitcase, whether it should be checked or whether it should go on the airplane or not. But certainly if you have ongoing issues, if you have what we call perpetual issues, that you keep getting into gridlock in your relationship, you do need to talk about those. But you need to find a way to talk about them in a calm fashion. You need to have a different kind of conversation about them. And one of those tools, there are many tools to helping create that different conversation, but one of those tools is what I'm talking about today, and that is interrupt and repair. Reach out and repair. So think about what I've said. If you'd like more information, please give me a call or check out my website at www.AnneGoshen.com. And thank you and aloha.